Well, we'll be starting in about 2 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Rashmi, can you please record?
Yes, Sanjay. I'll do that.
Yeah. Hello, wildlifers. Hope you're all doing fine. We, members of Rotary Fellowship of Wildlifers for Conservation, share a common interest, that's wildlife and its conservation, willing to work with the 119-year-old organization Rotary towards building a future in which people and nature thrive. To share a few notes about our fellowship group, we are a group of around 795 interested Rotarians, Rotractors, and individuals who have globally united around a common interest with the primary purpose to network and further friendship. Although our fellowship activities are conducted independently of Rotary International, they are in harmony with the Rotary policies. Our purpose is to create awareness about importance of wildlife, to promote lasting friendships outside one's own club, district, and country, and to promote locally, regionally, and globally that conservation of living resources are important to humans and future generations to enjoy our natural world and the incredible species that live within it. Today, we have members of different Rotary clubs and friends of Rotary from different parts of the world for this meeting. A hearty welcome to each one of you. On behalf of wildlifers, I also extend a very warm welcome to our speaker, Ms. Meera Chandran, who has over a decade of experience in restoration of degraded lands, working on sacred groves restoration, coffee estate diversity planting, and forest land restoration through the NGO she has co-founded, Forest First Samiti. Forest First Samiti works on invasive management and conservation of native RET species in Wayanad and Kodagu in Western Ghats. Forest First has worked on over 500 acres of land restoration, conserving 150 tree species jointly with tribal communities. Prior to fully immersing in conservation, she was working with TCS for over 16 years. Meera has a degree in electrical engineering and also law. Today, we will hear about restoration of critical elephant habitat from Meera. Over to you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thanks to Rotary for inviting me over, and it's a great opportunity to interact with all of you. I'll quickly move on to the presentation. Please let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Sure. Thank you. So I'll just quickly move on to the slide. In the interest of time, I guess we have around 40 minutes for this session, and then an interactive. I'm hoping that it's going to be lively with all of you asking your questions, your concerns, and having this as a more interactive session. Thank you once again. As mentioned, we are 14 years, and over the years we have slowly and steadily been working on, and as of today, we have been conserving around 500 acres of land, which includes forest land, sacred groves, coffee estate, diversity planting. So this is our breadth of experience. But today's discussion, I will focus around our experience with respect to forest land restoration. I think I need to hide my screen on Zoom, hide the video panel. Yeah. I hope the screen is visible fully.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So to just give a gist of what we are working in Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. So I'll just give you a gist of what Kerala has gone through, starting from 1973 to 2016. And you can just see from the map, the level of degradation, in terms of hectares, roughly around 9,000 odd square kilometers of forest land, and, which we have. But then there has been an extreme degradation over the past many years. And today what we have left is of the very dense forest is only 1%. So when we talk about the forest land, we have the western, in fact, Kerala is a land which is between the Western Ghats, the biodiversity hotspot, and the Arabian Sea. So it's a very small strip of land. And this used to be home to several endemic species, rich forests, especially on the western scarps of the Western Ghats, where the monsoon hits the peninsular India. So it's also to do with the rainfall regime. It is also to do with the geography that, we used to have this very dense forest. So it's only 1% left over, at the moment. Yeah. So coming to Wayanad, what do we have in store in Wayanad? Like, the degradation in Wayanad starts from 1950. And this is not our data. This is actually a research that was done on impact of plantation-induced forest degradation on the outbreak of emerging infectious diseases. So if you just look at it, 1950 to 2018, there has been 62% reduction in forest land and 1,800% increase in plantations. Now, all this history, it starts pre-independence. Britishers, when they came, and then they have, as part of the colonization, there has been a lot of plantations, including teak, tea, coffee, and several others, right? And post-independence, we have only continued with that habit of ours to more and more encroach into forest lands, and then convert the natural forests into plantations. So the impact of it, you can see in these two images. 1950 is here and 2018 is here. I think most of what we have all over Western Ghats, if you just see, it might be similar. We are not saying Wayanad is alone, but then the degradation as Wayanad has actually been much more when you compare with any of the districts that you will see in Karnataka. When you see a map in Kodagu, you will still have most of its forest, at least along the fringes, left. So you can also see that the contiguity of the forest is also extremely affected because of this conversion of land use. Now, what are we facing now? As we speak, this is the map of the Tolpati range where we are working. This is part of the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary has got two parts, which is the Muthanga range and the Tolpati range. Both are not contiguous. And the Tolpati range has a border sharing with Nagarhole. And it is also it also goes through several of these coffee estates through human habitations, and connect to Kabini Reservoir, also the Bandipur National Park. So you have these two larger national parks in Karnataka, and this Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary is sitting like one small animal corridor in between. So what we are facing now is Senna spectabilis. You may not have heard about it. Some of you might have heard about it. This is again an introduced species, much like our Lantana camara. There is a difference. Lantana camara is a shrub, whereas this is a tree. So it was brought in again, like lantana, it was brought in as an ornamental species. It has got a beautiful beautiful yellow flowers that bloom. The entire area will look very beautiful, but then the impact of it is extreme as far as our forests are concerned. So this was a map done in terms of the levels of invasion. It's called the alien invasive species. So one is there are alien exotic species what are introduced, but once it start going out of control and you don't have any local predation of that particular species, then it becomes invasive. So that's about it in very simple terms. Having said that, I would like to show you the canopy of a of a very dense forest, a native forest, evolved over millions of years, home to several endemic species, including the endangered line-tailed macaque. And this is the Silent Valley National Park. What we have conserved as part of several years of struggle, in the early 1980s, and today it is conserved for the future generation. So this is the positive side of Kerala that I can actually talk about, how a national park and how such a wet evergreen forest has been conserved, because in fact this is the area where there was a proposed dam, and for power generation, but then because of the struggle, today we have it intact for all of us to enjoy. But what do we have in these forests, the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary? This is the thick understory of the Senna spectabilis. This also looks like a great canopy. It looks very dense, but this doesn't have the characteristic of the tropical forest or the moist deciduous forest that it is supposed to be in Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. So what we have is a mix of these two species, the Senna spectabilis and Lantana camara. This is how Lantana camara looks like. You might be very familiar with Lantana camara because it's a very common species. Everybody knows about it. But the invasion is extremely high, especially in open forests. And what you see usually is the plantations that are either converted into teak plantations, and then there is a clear felling of teak. The next colonization is Lantana camara. So that's what we are also seeing in Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. In areas where there has been a clear felling of teak, there is also an opening created, a sudden shock created in the ecosystem, and Lantana camara starts colonizing. This is a riparian buffer, what we call it, along the stream course. There are several large species. We call it the riverine species. An example of a riverine species is wild mango is a good example of a riverine species. There are several, wild species of mango. Then there are many, many other species that are wild edible fruits that are found along the riverine course. Now, there is another aspect to it, that these species, the floral species, are able to withstand a very high water level condition. The root structure is able to withstand that. And that's how these riverine species have evolved, to establish in the river course. Now, this is a very intact and fairly good patch of the riparian buffer. The river that you are seeing in this image is one of the tributaries of river Kabini. Kabini actually originates in the Wayanad district as three rivers. One is called the Panamaram River, the Mananthavadi River, and the Tirunelli River. And this particular river is the Tirunelli River. It originates in the Brahmagiri ranges on one side, or rather the Kerala side of the Brahmagiri, and flows and joins Kabini. So there are several rivulets. Actually, if you just look at Wayanad and Kodagu, the district is, the water map or the hydrology map of the districts, it looks like veins, right? Several streams, first order streams joining together and forming a large river. And while we talk about the origin of river Kaveri as Talakaveri, these are also origins of river Kaveri, because Kabini is one of the primary tributaries of river Kaveri. So the whole east sloping districts of both Kodagu and Wayanad are feeding Kaveri and feeding millions of people living in peninsular India all the way to Chennai. And I don't need to speak about the water forest between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Everybody knows about it. Having said that, this is inside the sanctuary. This particular patch was photographed, and you can see the riparian buffer. Many years of land use change, conversion into plantations, and later on converting into an open forest. This is the state of some of the streams that are flowing even through our moist deciduous forests. What is the impact would be definitely the soil water holding capacity. When you don't have the forest, when we have just 2 days of rain, there is a flash floods. And within 1 day, when the rain stops, the river, there's hardly any water in the river. So this has been the state of affairs. While we are working on the ground, we are directly witnessing this phenomenon. So overall, when we look at it, Wayanad, with its invasive species, with the absence of native trees and native grass, the impact that we are definitely seeing is lack of fodder availability and lack of soil water holding capacity. And the ultimate impact is human-animal conflict. So you must have heard about the Belur Makhna issue in Wayanad. There is always this instances of animal conflict and also, fueled by the local politics that are very prevalent in Kerala. So it all adds up to the fire, and it's one feeding into the other kind of a situation. And where we are working in the Tolpatti range is also the Tirunelli village, which has the highest population of indigenous tribes in Kerala, and a critical animal corridor. So having said that, what are we doing? The problems are many, problems are plenty, but we have been working in our small ways of solving this big problem that we have at hand. So we have the solution and approach which we have been evolving over the last decade. And for the forest land restoration, what we do are very simple few processes, but then we constantly do it. We have like 10 months of activity going on the ground. The entire work is also supporting livelihoods of tribals who are working with us. So pitting and planting of native RET species we are doing. But if you look at the overall work that we do, when compared to the invasive management, and if you take all of this put together, we do something like 25% of the activity as native or RET species conservation. But our predominant work is in terms of invasive management. So during monsoon, we do 2 activities, pitting and planting and invasive senna removal. Then we have, during summer, we do lantana removal, and we also do maintenance and mulching of the planted saplings. During April and May, when over the past few years, it has been extreme dryness that we are seeing in the area, we built a small check dams. I can't call a big one. That is only for small structures to ensure that there is grass regeneration, not even for holding water. These are temporary structures, so that during summers you have this grass regeneration happening. We do seed collection because this is also the time for a lot of native trees to start giving seeds, and then these seed collection basically goes back into our RET native floral species nursery. And of course, all the work that we do on the field, it is also doubling up as fire monitoring during the April-May season. Now, what do we conserve, right? I mean, these are extremely critical to understand the native species, especially for Western Ghats. And when you are working on forest land, we are extremely sensitive about what are we conserving. So to just give you a broad understanding, we do pollinator attracting species, which are biologically important. Then we do wild edible fruits. Several of them are keystone species, pioneer, and riverine species, and many of them fall under the category of rare, endangered, and threatened species. To put it very simply, RETs are nothing but if you have tiger in the faunal world, you have these are the tigers of the floral world. That's how we can put it as, the RAT in a very simple term. It is extremely rare. Some of them, don't have high predation, probably because of the human extraction itself. And that's how it has actually moved into the endangered list. So some of the flowering species you can see, this is a riverine species. The Hydnocarpus pentandra is a riverine species. Mitragynna is a riverine species. These are all, species that are found in the local forest. So we take templates of the natural forest, and what we do is copy paste of what is actually naturally regenerating the forest. So because of that, our species is not commonly found. Not many nurseries are supporting these species. So there is a lot of work that we need to do in our nursery, and also to network with nurseries who are conserving these species. So I'll go back to senna. The second process that we do during the monsoon, we need to have wetness of the soil to work on senna. You can see that the understory of senna is extremely, barren. As you keep walking through the senna, through these thick canopy of senna, you will observe that there is hardly any blade of grass. And as a restorer, we are extremely sensitive about grass, because that's the first thing that should ideally colonize once we start working on invasive management. So you'll see that these are the thick, dense patches, not a single blade of grass. So what do? We have been working on several processes. We do a manual uprooting process. That is what we have been evolving over the years, making a manual process more efficient. Now you'll ask, why are we doing this manual process? Why can't we just take an earth mover, just go and completely remove it? There are two reasons. One, Senna spectabilis is extremely allelopathic, and it doesn't let any native species to thrive. So in the earlier image, you can see that there is no grass, but there are also certain pioneer species like Indian rosewood, or even species like, Trivia nodiflora, which is able to just coexist with the senna species. So what happens is, as we uproot senna or as we remove senna, quickly these native species will be able to thrive. So if you use an earth mover, one, you will have soil compaction. Two, you are going to do a tilling process where you will unearth a lot more seeds of senna that has actually fallen on the ground, which will have at least 5 years of viability, and it will start germinating again. So because of that, we don't use earth movers that are actually doing a lot of tilling process on the ground. So that is one primary reason why selectively senna is uprooted. So when we work on any tree of senna, what we do is we uproot the entire root structure. So even with an earth mover, you might be able to just go push the tree down, very easily. But the most effort-intensive part of a large senna tree is this lateral root, which can go up to about 40 feet. This is the largest lateral root that our team has taken, and it has to be dug out. So that is what is another reason why an earth mover process will become counterintuitive and counterproductive. So these are some numbers that you can see in terms of the girth size of the largest tree. Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary, because senna got introduced in Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary, you will also see very large old trees of senna, which is fruiting and flowering and ultimately colonizing the open forests and all that stuff. So this is one aspect of the senna. So while we worked on all this manual uprooting process in scattered zones of senna, we also moved into extremely dense areas of senna with a certain handheld tools. So we have been working on certain aspects of it, which needs to be made more efficient. So this kind of a handheld tool has actually helped us in ensuring that the root structure removal is made more efficient. So this is something that we've been following. for certain types of senna invasion. It's not that the tool is effective for large senna roots. The big, very large size senna, we don't use the tool. But more dense, medium and smaller size senna, we use the tool as of now. So what is our impact, right? You might be wondering, like, this is so much on the ground, and what are we doing at the end of it? Won't it come back again? It will come back again the next year, but that is why we also need to ensure that there is a 3-year process. The first year, if I am spending X amount, the second year, we have spent only 10% of the X. And in the third year, it is only 1% of the first X that we have spent in uprooting senna. So you need to have that rigor in terms of ensuring the secondary regeneration of seedlings is completely eliminated, especially during the first year. So after uprooting, every land needs to be handled to ensure the secondary regeneration from the seeds is handled in a very effective manner during the monsoon or even before the onset of the monsoon. So we did what is called the land use, land cover change satellite imagery. And this is what you can see, the areas of dense and extremely dense senna, which was uprooted. And after image of the same LULC maps, you can see that native species of grass and trees are regenerating and re-establishing. So basically, it's a grassland which is coming back as an immediate step. This you can see in all the plots. Every plot that we have different KML files, which is actually GPS tracks. And we are tracking that whole change with respect to the density of senna and the effectiveness of the work that we are doing on the ground. So that is the maps that telling you, maps will not tell lies. Even if I say lies, maps will not, will be truthful to us. But then I will also show you the ground truthing in terms of the images that is coming up from the ground. So this is the senna pit that was uprooted in 2021. And within just about 6 months, we were able to ensure that, grass is re-established in that area. And these are the root structure of senna is such that the taproot, or rather the taproot structure, will not go deep. It is the lateral root that goes all over, and it is literally standing on the lateral root. The taproot, in certain cases, especially for these large size senna, it's almost absent. And in many places, the grass has started to return back. This is another process that we do. It's called the ANR, or the Assisted Natural Regeneration, where we uproot lantana around naturally established tree. So you will see that, how the tree has basically grown in the same tree that has grown in just about 3 years, because the tree was absolutely stunted under lantana, and it's able to establish the canopy and also to create a small ecosystem with all the grass thriving, in that patches. And many species, for example, the Cinnamomum malabatrum is understory species of semi-evergreen species. This has started to colonize, and several other elephant yam and many medicinal plants have also to regenerate naturally. These are all images of many native species, ferns, and several native shrub species. This particular species is called Helictrus isora. It is also a favorite of elephants and several bird species. Bird species. It's a pollinator plant. It is beautifully pioneering. This is another ficus tree, which is again a pioneer, on the ground. And all these are not planted by us. This is all establishing naturally just by ensuring that allelopathic invasive senna is completely uprooted without even a piece of it left on the ground. This is more evolution of how native species are establishing. Gloriosa superba, many of you would have seen this species. It is actually blooming in the Western Ghats now. Good to see. It's a delight to see as we go there. Several species of orchids has started to come back in these uprooted plots of Senna spectabilis. This is a wild arrowroot. This particular species I do not know. We need to ideate. Same thing with assisted natural regeneration with all the lantana. Overall, we have uprooted 24,000 such naturally regenerated saplings. Uprooted lantana around naturally regenerated saplings so that they can establish well. This was lantana around a species called Nandimara in Kannada. It's called Vendeka in Malayalam. It's called the nude lady of the forest, the common name, and that is, given a chance to establish the canopy very well. Similarly, these were all native, lantana uprooted saplings. At this level, the lantana was there, and the tree has the tree was literally under the lantana, strangulated, and after removing the lantana, the tree has actually starting to establish the canopy. And these are like umpteen examples of how these 24,000 tree saplings that are naturally regenerated is establishing in a invasive uprooted plots. These are some of our planted species. So as I said, what we plant are the pioneers, the wild edible fruits, and what can establish in a degraded ecosystem. The first year we were, though we had almost a decade of experience working in Kodagu and Wayanad, we were working in smaller private, lands like 8 acres, 10 acres, and we have also worked in sacred groves, 30 acres. So these are all extremely controlled plots, not in a fully wild condition like this. So what would happen in a wild condition was fairly unknown to us from a plant species planting perspective, right? So we have evolved certain techniques for ensuring that, the saplings establish, in spite of all the wildlife movement around. So one such thing is to establish or rather plant in between lantana. While on one side we are uprooting lantana, we are also seeing that lantana is able to kind of act like a semi wrapper of these species and protect it. And then many of our saplings that are planted are able to establish. These are some of the common species, not the RETs or anything, but then found in that particular landscape. And these are the easy to establish ones, I would say. Melina arborea is not very easy to establish, but then it has got high levels of predation by ungulates like deer and sambar and all that. But then once it establishes at a certain height, then we don't need to worry about it. There are several species. This Syzygium travancoricum, it's a critically endangered species. This is Syzygium stocksy. It is, I don't know the Kannada name for this. This particular species is a riverine species, amazingly a high survivor in the landscape. And it is able to, whatever we have planted is able to establish very beautifully and also growing in the riverine course. This is also a high survivor pioneer, usually found in degraded patches, open forests, especially if you see areas where power grid lines have completely chopped off a portion of the forest. And after that, you go back to that land, you will see this as one of the first level colonizers of tree species that would come and establish. It's an easy to establish species. Vitex, in our area, it was difficult to see Vitex in the complete open patches. In fact, we also did a listing of species. Before we started the work, we found only 10 species that are naturally regenerating under lantana. So all these species that we have planted, it is very carefully selected from the template of good forests and planted there in these open patches so that it can establish. And Canarium strictum, it is again a RET species, critically endangered. Veteria indica is also critically endangered species. This is not a RET, it is commonly found. It's called the Indian kino tree. This is also a commonly found, naturally establishing, but then we are also planting these species. So yeah, so several more. So I'll not bore you too much on the scientific names. But then what has worked for us, right? I mean, we have overall, if you look at the success rate, every year we do, while doing the mulching, we also do what is called the mortality count. Our tribal team is well equipped in also handling the data. We have registers, we have planting register, we have mulching register. So because of that, every plot, we also know what is the success rate of our planting. So one is we plant very well established saplings. So because of that, the time a sapling spends in our nursery is more. We don't rush into planting directly from the seedbed. We ensure that the saplings are fairly big enough. Only then, it can establish in this kind of wild conditions. Because there is no option for us to work on watering and all that stuff. And many of these tree species, you should not be watering it, because these are species that establishes in wild conditions, and humans need not go and it's more like a feeding bottle syndrome that you have by putting water and doing that. So it has to basically establish in that ecology, and that is why we call it species selection is extremely important. So we say right species in the right ecosystems. The image in this photo is of a grassland. We don't plant in this area. Typically, you have very high levels of mortality, because when you see such open grassland and devoid of Lantana camara, people have the tendency to just go and plant saplings there. But these are areas where you will have the highest mortality if you go and plant. So we don't plant in these kind of patches. These patches are left as grassland and left for wildlife to thrive. We don't need tree species over here. If there are species that are able to establish naturally, it will come. We don't need to go and plant and then, and then the entire cycle of it. Plant only during the monsoon, and ensuring that certain areas are heavily used by ungulates for browsing. You will get to know certain patches and all that. We don't do planting in those patches. So our density of planting is extremely low. We in a moist deciduous forest, I would say that we plant roughly around 150 saplings, after all the mortality and all that stuff. 150 saplings per acre. That's all we plant. Now, these KML files that you see, these are all the areas where we are doing intervention, either senna uprooting everywhere, wherever we have intervened, 100% we ensure that senna uprooting is happening. Now, there is another question, why is it that we don't do large-scale lantana uprooting? One reason is that when you have a higher invader, higher colonizer, or a more profuse colonizer like Lantana camara, one needs to, a more profuse colonizer like Senna spectabilis, one needs to first deal with Senna before you deal with Lantana camara. Because Lantana, sitting in the ecosystem, some of these, it doesn't have as much as allelopathy as the Senna spectabilis. There are at least 10 species that are germinating under the Lantana. So it's a trade-off. So if you go and completely uproot Lantana all over the area, then Senna is waiting to colonize. Without uprooting Senna, Senna is waiting to colonize. So our approach has been to first treat the Senna, and only then deal with Lantana. And that is why you will see that we are dealing with Lantana around naturally established saplings. So what did we do in this 3 to 4 years time, for forest land restoration? We started with a very small 70 acres, and we have moved on to 400 plus acres as of March 2024. As we speak, there is work going on. There are 80 people working on the ground. They are doing this day in and day out. Started with just about 15 of them, and we have come to 80. In fact, this poster says 68. That was as of March 2024. But this year, thanks to all our grantors, we have been able to add more, tribal team into this pool of people who are working as our restorers. And in terms of saplings planted, just about 40,000. So you can imagine, the landscape and the amount of planting that we are doing. It is, it's fairly insignificant compared to the invasive management work that we are doing. Overall, in terms of Senna that we have uprooted, the most difficult task among everything that we are doing we have crossed 247 acres of 100% uprooting without without senna on the landscape. We have a few seedling management that we have to do here and there, but it is only 1% of the first year's cost that we are dealing with. We have 4 indigenous tribal communities: Paniers, Katunaikars, Urali Kurumbas, and the Kurichiers. Some of them are also on the Kerala side, you call it the Jain Kurumbas. We call it the Thain Kurumbas in the Kerala side. So the Urali Kurumbas are also part of the Thain Kurumbar community. So yeah, 412 acres we have reached. And another interesting bit is all these GPS tracks are done by our tribal restorers. The data, everyday data is collected by the tribal restorers. There is also Google Sheet that they are trained to enter. So everything is in terms of data is on cloud. So that's the other interesting aspect of this work. This is our friend Daniel Sukumar, who is also doing a bird assessment. One of his interesting study over the past few months, starting from May this year, is when he saw just 7 species, which is just flying by, on inside the senna, or over the canopy of a dense patch of senna. He has been able to identify and spot 122 different species of birds in areas where we have uprooted senna. And while I'm talking about areas where it was uprooted as of January 2024. What I'm saying is, from January 2024, in just a span of 3 months, he has been able to see these many species of birds. So it's a positive sign that we are seeing on the ground. And another observation that he has also mentioned is that there are more of insectivorous birds that is actually coming and colonizing in the senna uprooted plots. Butterfly survey is also on. We have another botanist who is supporting us with both butterflies and plants. So this is also another monitoring that we are doing at the moment. And hopefully by the end of March, we will have more data surrounding both our birds, butterflies, and mammals to share with all of you. So overall, we have around 11 unique CSRs who are supporting us with various things. We also do a bit of solar homes for our tribal restorers. Overall 120 homes, all the restorers who have come, they've got their solar installation in their homes. It is 1 panel, 2 lights, and a mobile charger. It is a home installation system done by Selco that we are doing. And a few bee boxes that we have, that's only on an experimental basis. We are not doing large this thing because bee boxes, because we wanted to first test out the impacts of it. So that is at a very small scale that we are doing. So overall, our experience spans, in terms of the percentage, we have almost 30,000 as of March 2024 that we have given to in terms of livelihood to the tribal communities. So restoration working as livelihood to the tribal communities. So these are our grantors, several of them who have very organically come forward, some of them who are supporting us for more than 1 year. Of course, we are very happy when there are grantors who come and join us for at least 3 years, but we have not been that lucky. Some of them just come for a year and then, they don't continue the funding. So overall, the restorers are also benefited by this kind of support that we are getting from our grantors. This was a social impact assessment that was done. And there was a very interesting bit of, it was done by Gram. And one of the interesting, observations that they had was the alcoholism among the tribals have come down, especially the restorers who are working with us have come down because the number of work days has increased, and they just have about just maybe because just the Sunday for them to, enjoy, so 5-6 days of work, Monday through Saturday, they have to come forward. So that's probably one reason. 30% they are able to reduce their power consumption. So that was also another impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Any questions? Please feel free to raise your hand. You can unmute yourself and ask. If you have anything to ask, you can even use the chat box. Yeah, Kiran sir, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. Lantana camera, is there any, I don't know whether I'm sure, medicinal value, any byproduct can be produced out of lantana camera?
So I'll just give you our background experience with both Lantana camera and Senna spectabilis. I don't know any medicinal, uses of Lantana camera. There are organizations who have tried Lantana camera for making small furniture and small curios and artifacts and all that stuff. But as a philosophy, when it comes to invasives, one of the fundamental things that we need to understand is the moment we try to find a use to an invasive, which you want to eradicate, what happens ultimately is that the communities basically will start, ensuring that the invasive stays in the landscape. So that's actually the what is it called? If I have to just weigh the pros and cons of finding a use to it, right? The motive for us is the eradication, because we wanted native grass to regenerate in the land. So we have not gone into the supply chain of the whole invasive species, and we would just want one of the aspects that we are doing for Lantana camara is it's a very easy species to degrade, so it goes back as soil carbon. And after it goes back as soil carbon also, there is a very nice regeneration of native grass and other species that is coming in this ecosystem. Because lugging around Lantana, which is a thorny species, definitely is not a very great idea. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, thank you.
There are a couple of questions in the chat box. If anyone wants to ask, please raise your hand. In the meanwhile, I'll ask this question from Dr. Christopher. He's a member of, he's a chair of the Rotary, action group for endangered species. He wants to know what is done with Lantana and Senna after its removal. Any recycling to wood bricks is his question.
So as far as Lantana is concerned, we are not doing anything, any use. As I said, I think, I partially answered that question, in the previous query. Lantana, it is made, it is just allowed to degrade, and that degradation it just happens in just about 2 months, 3 months of a time frame. It just crumbles. Senna takes longer to degrade. One of the things that the local communities have been doing is they are actually taking the cut after the eradication, whatever is the biomass that is there, they are just taking it as firewood. Whoever is needing it for firewood, it is just taken as firewood. So it just gets burnt.
Yeah, there's one more question from Christopher. He says, final photo seemed to be all men. Any women involved in this? You have, of course, answered this to me, but for the audience.
Yeah, I am here. One, the woman component. I have another colleague of mine who is a woman component. As far as the restorer is concerned, we have 3 women who are working in the core eco-restoration. We have 2 women who are working in the nursery. One of the reasons why women are lesser is because locally it's not easy to find women who are comfortable enough to work in a forest land ecosystem. Women are okay to work along the roadside and plots and all that. So we have left it to the communities to decide whoever is willing to come. We are very happy to take more women on the ground. So this was 2 years back. We requested if there were women who could join. So they are coming as a unit, as a family unit, and working so that their safety is also taken care internally.
Yes, Dr. Chris, please ask.
Yes, so thank you so much for your answers there. One of the things, the actual title of your program is actually leads to elephant and human conflict. Would you like to discuss this a little bit more about the conflict between the animals and humans and how that's being dealt with?
So if I have to talk about Kerala as a state, the human-animal conflict, there is the tribal communities who have actually shown how they're able to coexist with the wild animal species. But then there are the settler communities who are extremely intolerant towards the wild animals. So that's where the division starts. And many of times it's often the settler community who has raised this concern of sighting elephants in their coffee plantations. When elephants keep moving between forests, as I showed you in the map, the entire forests are extremely disintegrated. The contiguity is lost. But then there is a lot of effort done by other organizations also, like Wildlife Trust of India has been working on re-establishing wildlife corridors, especially the elephant corridors. So one of the critical elephant corridor, the Tirunelli-Kudrakode corridor, is very close to the area we work. So there is a lot of effort. One of the mitigation is to ensure that the corridors are established. The other mitigation, of course, is the management of invasive species, which we are doing. Then the Kerala Forest Department has been doing a lot of work in terms of the conflict management, right? I mean, when it comes to what are the rapid response units that one can, have to handle the man-animal conflict issues when a conflict happens. When there is an elephant, an individual that is actually moving through the coffee estates, how do you deal with that? Because Kerala is also a very thickly populated state. Several of these are extremely high in terms of human habitation. So there are a lot of groups working on different aspects of the human-animal conflicts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that question, Dr. Chris. I appreciate Dr. Chris because it's 4 a.m. in the morning for him and he promptly attends the sessions. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Bharat, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'm sorry I joined a little late, but I had a question which was kind of, I've heard from many people in Kerala. So I just wanted to know if the speaker is willing to comment on that. So I was told that since independence, over many decades, for example, just now you were talking about settlers versus tribals. And I was told that many forest lands have been settled by outsiders through encroachment. And because of the political ideology of Kerala, the government actually said, after 10 years or 15 years, if you have, squatted on the forest land, they will give you title to it. And apparently, once the title is given, many people have promptly sold the property and further on encroached into further forest. And this has happened 2-3 times. The cycle has taken place. This is what I heard from many people from Kerala. So what is your view on this and how much of a problem is this?
Definitely. See, 1970s is when for Grow More Food program is when one of the wave of settlement that happened in the hill districts, right? I mean, for conversion of plantation, that's very evident in those satellite images that I shared in the beginning. The degradation of Wayanad forests starting from 1950. But today, while we speak, one is the farmers, the conflicts, or rather the estates, or rather the large private coffee estates that were established, or even the tea estates that were established, hundreds of hectares, which were again on encroached forest land. It is true that that is a fact, and otherwise you will not have these high levels of conversion of very pristine forest that is, that has been converted into plantations. So that is the first wave, I would say, for this agriculture, for plantations like teak, tea, then rubber and coffee and several other crops that we see as the cash crops. The second wave is happening maybe in the past 1 decade, which is tourism. So we, the aspect of tourism, or rather the impact of tourism, is also very subtle, right? I mean, you will not see the impact directly. Even the Mundakai landslide, there are these, outright, there are these numbers that are coming out that there were more than, several resorts that were did not even have licenses, which was actually, sitting on the banks of that river, the Punjirimattam or any of those places that are extremely fragile, right? So tourism definitely has its impact as we keep talking about ecotourism or any such thing. Like, where is the carrying capacity? If we are saying that Wayanad as a district has 8 lakhs of resident population, what is the population that is coming in as tourists? 20 to 22 lakhs tourists come annually. So how do we handle this? All over Western Ghats, this is a problem. It is not just a problem of Wayanad. So this second wave, I would say, is scarier than the first wave, and we don't know the impacts of this, because it also means there are lots of roads that are going to be cut through the thick canopy of the leftover forests, for tourism. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Kiran, sir. Please.
Yeah, one small question, ma'am. You see, if I look into the whole the presentation, the 3 aspects. One is removal of lantern camera. Number 2, increasing the soil carbon by dumping there itself. And the native plants are being grown. Is there any study on coining the emission of carbon or absorption of the carbon the other way around, if you look at it, and the carbon trading off? Any study has been done on that gain?
So we have done a study. We have done a comparative analysis in Senna plot, dense Senna plot, and because we are also removing a lot of carbon while we are talking about Senna, right? I mean, Senna, if you just look at it from a pure carbon perspective and not that much from a biodiversity perspective, maybe we will not remove Senna spectabilis, but that's not the way to go, right? So the calculation that we have got from this independent agency who did the analysis of Senna spectabilis, carbon sequestration, and how the recovery would happen. The analysis that they gave us was that, in 3 years' time, up to around 7 years' time, we will be able to recover to the carbon of what it is, yes, of what we removed, right? But then to reach the levels of a moist deciduous forest, it would definitely take, 20 years. It's not going to be an easy task, when we are uprooting invasive species. But the positive side for us is the ground truthing that we are doing, and all the native shrubs and other species that are very nicely colonizing after the uprooting of invasive Senna. So I'm also just waiting to see how some of the uprooted plots of 2021 will look in 2026, because we are already seeing how canopy is establishing through the establishment of pioneer species. Like Trivia nudiflora is one of the most common pioneer that is able to establish immediately after uprooting Senna spectabilis.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Meera. So if I just wanted to ask you if any of our members would like to volunteer in, what you're doing, say for planting or removal, can they be a part of it? And if yes, how?
So here is my straightforward answer to the planting bit of it. We're not averse to urban people coming for planting. It's a very tough landscape. It is not like planting in Bangalore or any of the cities that we are used to. It's a landscape where we are on foot when you have elephants and tigers around. That is one aspect of it. But yeah, safety for us is taken care again by the group, right? I mean, we have almost like 40-member teams working in every area that we are working on. So we have had volunteers who come, but then we are very happy when volunteers come for the senna seedling uprooting, because that is a activity that we will have to do the first year of uprooting senna, because one, it'll look like a paddy, immediately after uprooting the first year, the secondary regeneration will look like paddy. So it's easy to uproot for people from this kind of a setup. Planting might be difficult because we have very tough people working. We have like 2 kilometers of head loads at times. Those who are physically active, those who are physically strong, we welcome them. There is no problem. But why I'm saying this is because it's not a terrain which is very easy, to deal with. So Senna spectabilis seedling uprooting, yes, I would say during monsoon, we are happy to welcome people and have a small group of volunteers with, necessary precautions. Yes, we will be able to handle that.
Yeah.
And anyone who wants to do, who has a scientific background, who wants to help us with maybe satellite imagery or those kind of technical help, we are happy to collaborate.
Yeah, thank you. There is one question in the chat box. Madam, why can't habitat restoration be for all the biodiversity available in the habitat? Why only elephants? Can't elephants make their own way? Your views. Harsha Lakshminarayan wants to know.
So the first question, why can't biodiversity? In fact, I don't know whether you saw the nature of the presentation, except for the human and animal conflict image of an elephant, you didn't see an elephant. We were talking about rest of biodiversity. We were talking about plants, we were talking about shrubs. We were also talking about birds and butterflies. So these are the first indicators. Elephants are all over. And one of the observations that we have had is that in areas where we have uprooted senna, elephants have been frequenting very often. Because of the lack of data, we are not presenting that data again here. Not just the elephant, we are also seeing deer, a very high population of deer who, as and when, because, what we are doing by uprooting senna is bringing in grass. In just about 3 months, we have grass. So with grass comes deer. So that is another reason why the first year after uprooting in dense senna plots, we don't do planting there. We leave it for 1 year for that plot to recover naturally. Because planting again is will be unsuccessful if you do it. Because first of all, you have opened up, and then you are bringing grass and bringing deer, and then if you try to plant, the survival rates will be extremely low. So we leave it for 1 year, allow the shrubs to come, allow certain cover to come, and then we plant in between the cover.
Yeah.
I think there was a second question. Yes, biodiversity is all taken care. It's not just the elephants. So that was the first. Second question, I forgot the question. If you could please.
I know. Can't elephants make their own way?
Elephants will anyway make their way. You don't think we can stop the elephants at all. So interestingly, there is the only reason why we feel that this intervention is required is because of this allelopathic nature of Senna spectabilis in establishing other native floral species, especially grass, and that is why there is a lack of fodder availability in, under the Senna canopy. Why do we need to intervene in these landscapes is primarily because this is a human created problem in the first sense. As we have more and more forest lands not available with grass, then there is a big problem that we are actually having in hand. Elephants are moving out, and coming in conflict with the rest of the human habitation. So that's why I said elephants definitely is finding their way. Whether we do anything or not, elephants will find their way in farmlands, in coffee estates and other areas where there is presence of grass, or even in the large areas of grasslands. And elephants have, thrived much, before us, and they will definitely thrive. Maybe we are the ones who will perish, but elephants will definitely thrive. But the intervention is required because this is a human created problem.
Yeah, thank you. There's one question from Geetanjali. Geetanjali asks, who has access to the data uploaded to the cloud, and who owns the data? Is it also shared with the forest department?
So when I mentioned about the cloud, this is our internal cloud. The reason I wanted to give you that input is because, imagine a team of tribals. They are at the max in, they have completed their, +2. Many of them have just completed their SSLC, and a very few of them have actually gotten into their degree. They have been trained on, in using these tools, so that they are only, having the, what is it called? They're only managing and maintaining this data. Writing it. Earlier they used to just write it in a register and leave it, but the consolidation and accumulation of the data would not happen. So that is why we had to train them to use Google Sheets and KML, creating GPS tracks. They have GPS. Rather, they have been trained to use GPS to create the KML files and all that stuff. So the data is definitely owned by us, but every year to the forest department, we submit an implementation report giving the progress of the implementation that is happening on the ground. So ultimately, it may not be the individual data, but the cumulative data is available to the forest department.
Thank you. I had one question. Just like Senna and Lantana, this Parthenium is also an invasive weed, right? Do you take any special measures for removing that, or it's just incidentally that also happens if you see it around?
These are the smallest shrubs, but in large numbers, Parthenium, or even something like Cromolina odorata, which is also called Eupatorium. What happens is, once this larger invasive, like Senna spectabilis, goes, then it is always these colonizers, they will come and establish along with grass. But the good news is grass is there. Native grass is able to establish, and after native grass establishes, this other invasives will come. But our experience in working in private lands, or even in the forest land, is that as and when the canopy gets established, as and when the tree canopy is established and the shade is brought in, there is complete absence of these invasive species. So we need to have that wait period, and Eupatorium, for that matter, in certain patches, like we also do what is called a wetland management. We call it the vials in Wayanad. This is actually the area between a stream course and the hill area. You'll have like a cup, right? This can hold more water, the moisture levels are higher, the grass density is higher, and there are lesser trees on this kind of on these kind of micro ecosystems. So in those areas, we remove eupatorium, because then what happens is the grass will be able to establish faster, because anyway the tree cover is not going to come in those areas. So selectively we are doing the eupatorium management, but not everywhere. Everywhere to handle Parthenium and eupatorium, it will be turning the ocean. So that we are not doing. Yes.
Thank you. I think is that okay? There are two more questions.
Yes, I'm fine.
Yeah. One is a very generic question. Cosma wants to know the reason for non-contiguity of the forest land area.
That's again encroachments in the past. I think we have answered that in 1950, the map, if you have seen, it is all human encroachment, whether it is for farming or for tourism, doesn't matter. But we have encroached. As a species, we have encroached. If you just look at overall India, the geographical area of the whole national parks and sanctuaries put together is just about 2%. So 98% of land, the geographical land, human species are squatting on it, and we are crying conflict. Actually, who is in conflict?
Yeah, there's one question from Harsha. Madam, any future plans to scale this project to the whole Wayanad district? Any estimate cost presented now? I might have missed what he says. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. If we have the money, we would like to not just scale in Wayanad, we would like to scale in Karnataka too, because the problem is in Nagarhole. The problem is, we are actually contiguous to Nagarhole also. And, for us, Nagarhole is just about 10 kilometers away. And, this is like landscape agnostic, district agnostic. I don't think for ecology, we should think in terms of any of these administrative divisions. We would like to say, though we are in Wayanad district, we would like to say that we are in the Brahmagiri landscape in the Kabini catchment. So yes, if we have funds, we would be very happy to, replicate what we are doing. Or if anybody else wants to replicate also, we are very happy to, support that.
Thank you. So, it's Teachers' Day today in India, and we have all been well taught today by you, Ms. Meera. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with all of us. It was really wonderful, and yeah, to have wildlife, we need a habitat, and we are thankful to people, warriors like you, who are working on ground day in and day out to conserve, not only conserve, but also restore the forest. Thank you so much. Thank you one and all for joining today's session. Your last answer, costs, and if you would like to, spread it to Karnataka as well. Definitely, if we can do something through Rotary, I mean, this is something we can pitch in with Rotary leaders. Let's see how it pans out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to Rotary team for inviting me over, and I'm very happy to interact with all of you, and amazing questions that came, and happy to to interact with all of you who have asked the right questions, and that speaks volumes about your knowledge as a team. So thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.